Good evening and welcome to the March meeting of the Committee of Adjustments. Before we begin, I'll ask Mr. Roth to read the territorial acknowledgement.
We have gathered in Wilmot Township on the traditional territory of the Neutral, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee and the Mississauga peoples. We also want to acknowledge the importance of the Dish of the One Spoon Covenant, a peace agreement made between Indigenous nations before the Europeans arrived. It characterizes our collective responsibility to each other and to Mother Earth. We should only take what we need, leave enough for others, and keep the dish clean. By acknowledging this covenant and the First Nations, the Métis, and the Inuit peoples, we are reminded of our important connection to this land where we live, learn, and work together as a community.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce our committee. To my right, we have Mr. Miller, Ms. Kohler, and Mr. Roth. With us this evening is also Cameron Miller, the Township Planner, and my name is Tyler Bowman, the chair of this committee. We are an independent body appointed by Wilmot Township Council. We have the power to make minor changes to existing zoning regulations and to approve some changes to existing non-conforming uses and to give consent. Each applicant will be notified in writing of the decision within 10 days. With the decision will be instructions on how it can be appealed. Any decision made by this committee can be appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal, who will then hold a meeting and make a final decision. Only the applicant and certain prescribed public agencies can appeal the committee's decision. If the decision on a minor variance is not appealed, it becomes final and binding after 20 days from the date of this meeting. And if a decision on a consent is not appealed, it becomes final and binding after 20 days from the date the decision is mailed. The format for this evening will be as follows. Mr. Miller will introduce the application. The applicant will be invited to come forward and add any additional information if they choose. Following this, anyone in the audience or attending online will have the opportunity to speak for or against the application. And then the committee members may then ask questions of the applicant, and the committee will make a final decision following that. To start this evening, I'd like to ask, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none, I will ask Mr. Miller to introduce our first application.
Yes, thank you. The first application of this evening is minor variance A05/25 as it relates to 1367 Sandhills Road. And so this application is proposing to allow for an additional dwelling unit detached to be located closer to the road than the main dwelling. So the subject property is about a 6-acre wooded property, and it currently has a single detached dwelling on it. The reasoning for this application this evening is essentially that a new home is proposed to be constructed in behind the existing home. The new home is proposed to be larger, and therefore by default the new home, since again is larger, becomes the main dwelling. The home in front would therefore by default become the additional dwelling unit, and at time of construction it wouldn't comply with the additional dwelling unit regulations because it's located ahead of the main building. So again, rather than have the applicant reconfigure or potentially demolish the house, this is simply flipping the classification and allowing the main dwelling to be located in behind the existing home, which will become the additional dwelling unit. And again, as mentioned, this property is a woodlot. It's subject to the Region of Waterloo's woodland conservation bylaw, so tree clearings will be requiring approval from the Region of Waterloo as part of the building permit process for the house, as well as the septic system that's required to service the home. In circulating the application, we did not receive any concerns and are recommending that it be approved.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to speak on behalf of the application? No? There's no one else joining online tonight. Does the committee members have any questions regarding this application? Seeing none, could I get a motion from the committee to approve this application? Moved by Ms. Kohler, seconded by Mr. Miller. All in favor? And that motion is carried. And I'll pass it back to you for your second application tonight.
Yes, thank you. The next application is A06/25 concerning 2972 Nafziger Road, and this proposes to to allow for up to 35% of one accessory building, which is to be constructed, not exceeding a total area of 350 square meters in area to contain an additional dwelling unit detached. So this subject property is a 15-acre property. It's divided partially of a woodlot. There is an existing dwelling on the property as well as a small area that is currently farmed. The applicant is proposing to construct essentially what is going to be a drive shed with an additional dwelling unit located in the portion of the building. The new drive shed is going to be in the same location of the barn, which is being demolished. And similar to other applications that we've had here in the past, the additional dwelling unit regulations classify the entire building area as exceeding the 75% of the lot coverage of the existing dwelling when it contains a dwelling unit, despite only a small portion of that dwelling occupying the overall building. If we were to separate the two, the additional dwelling unit is only 55% of the lot coverage of the house, whereas you're permitted to build up to 75%. So again, this application is simply required because it is contained within the building. The additional dwelling unit would comply with all the other regulations and the township zoning bylaw. Staff didn't receive any concerns and are recommending that it be approved.
Thank you. Is there any, or is the applicant interested in speaking? No. Is there any questions for Mr. Miller on the application? No? Could I get a motion from the committee to approve the motion? Application moved by Mr. Rose, seconded by Ms. Kohler. All in favor? And that motion is carried as well. So the last item on the agenda tonight is the meeting, approving the meeting minutes. And it was noted earlier that Mr. Roth was on those twice. So if we remove that as amended, can I get a motion to approve the minutes? Moved by Mr. Miller, seconded by Ms. Kohler, sorry. All in favor, and that motion is approved, carried. And that'll be the meeting for this evening. Thank you for attending.